Radio Network.
Yes, it is, Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean radio show and podcast. I'm your host, Jeb Norton. Welcome aboard. Oh, we're going to have a bumpy ride. No, I don't think so. It's going to start out bumpy, but I think the weatherman is telling us our very special guest tonight is going to be Marshall Masters. He's also going to be serving as our weatherman and navigator tonight. It's going to start out bumpy, he's telling me, but it's probably going to end up smooth. We're going to coast on in tonight. But before we get to our guest who's waiting on the line here in Skype, what a great technology Skype is. Thank you. Got some housekeeping very much. We appreciate it. Make sure if you're joining us for the very first time on YouTube, I want to say thank you very much. We appreciate it. Make sure that you hit that ever most important subscribe button so you can stay informed of when new shows come out. If you're joining us on Facebook Live, I'm going to also say thank you to you as well. But I have to warn you, caution you, Facebook has a tendency of dropping our feed right in the middle of the good stuff. So if you don't want that to happen, so far they're 100%. It's happened every night for the last week and a half that we've been broadcasting live on Facebook. If you want to see the feed uninterrupted or unabated, I would probably recommend you go out to YouTube. Now, of course, with the video feed, you get my shiny face in the window. If that doesn't matter to you, you can always join us on Spreaker. You go out to our website, themidnightocean.com, and you will see Spreaker right there. Just hit the little play button, and you can listen to it. Now, the other thing, too, for those technology-savvy guys and gals with smartphones, you can always download our app. That's right. If you go out to themidnightocean.com, we have an Android and an Apple app. It will give you all of our past shows and our live shows right there on your phone. How cool is that? Trying to stay up with technology here at the Midnight Ocean. And of course, those on Twitter, you can listen to us through Twitter at the MN Ocean. That's the @, the MN Ocean is our Twitter handle. Man, what a show we have in store for you tonight. We're going to be talking about all things Nibiru. I'm sure, as you guys know, we're going to probably be talking about a lot of things with our very special guest, Marshall Master. And let me tell you, Marshall Masters is a former CNN Science Features news producer, freelance writer, television analyst, and publisher of Wow USA, and that's spelled YOW USA.com since 1990. He has been researching Earth changes and Nibiru flyby-related topics, including sustainable survival communities, catastrophic crop circles, impact events, and future technologies. Like many others, Marshall sees a dark cloud coming. What makes him different is that he also sees a silver lining, a noble and inspiring Star Trek future. And without further haste, Mr. Master, how are you, sir?
Just fine.
Wow.
Glad to be on, Jeff.
Well, I'm glad to have you on. I'm glad to have you on. And I have to apologize in advance if you hear the security alarm going off in the background. It's because my Great Pyrenees is not used to hearing me doing a show during the day.
Oh, okay.
It's the best security alarm. Everybody needs a Great Pyrenees. If they do that, then they don't have to pay ADT or any one of those security services. But you do have to feed the dog. At 160 pounds, he does eat quite a bit of food. So,
you have a meaningful relationship with dog food companies.
We do. Yes, we do. We own stock.
Yeah, you should.
No, actually, he does pretty good. It's amazing when we take him to the vet and they're like, how much? And it's like, hey, he eats 3 cups a day, which is not bad. I mean, for a dog his size.
Wow.
But he's in great shape. Unlike his owner. He's in great physical shape. And yeah, at 140 to, he tops out well when he was big. Before we cut him back a little bit, he was at 160, but now he's 140, but he's solid. He's not a dog you want to mess with. So,
Well,
but
sounds like someone good to have around during the tribulation.
he is. And that's, like I said, he is our alarm service. I mean, not only does he let you know, he lets us know if there's anybody within 50 yards of our house or our property. And then on top of that, he backs it up. He makes sure that they're not on the property that much longer. And, it's funny. We have videos of not him, but Great Pyrenees, chasing grizzly bears. That's what they're known in Russia and stuff. That's what they are. They protect the flock like that. And there's videos of them actually chasing grizzly bears off property and away from the animals. So
that's gutsy.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't. I'm like, I definitely wouldn't do it. But we're not here to talk about dogs. I could do a whole show on dogs.
Yeah.
Great animals. Cats too. I don't want to leave out our cat friends out there. I love cats. The only thing that I don't like about cats is that they don't need us. And they make it perfectly clear to humans that they don't need humans.
But you know the difference between cats and dogs is?
What's that?
A dog will say, wow, this guy loves me, feeds me, he must be a god. A cat says, wow, this guy loves me and feeds me, I must be a god.
You are so correct. You are so correct on that one, because I have had cats and yes, they are exactly that way. It's like, come on, you serve me. I'm not here to pleasure you or serve you. But
absolutely.
Oh well, but enough of that. I gotta ask, how is there a proper pronunciation to your website? Is it Yao? USA?
Yowza.
Okay, Yowza. Gotcha.
Yowza, and your own world. But people can also go to Two Suns in the Sky or marshallmasters.com. Those are easier domains to remember. When I first started Yowza, I didn't think it was really going to go that far. It was an old domain name I had from a travel business. And, I wound up staying with it. And I was in Israel in 2000 at Masada. And, as I was going, I just, the other side was just beating on me like a drum. You got to go to Masada. You're going to find something very important there. You're going to go to Masada. You're going to find something. And so, okay, enough already. I'll go. And so I went to Masada, and I covered that whole plateau fortress from one end to the other. I went everywhere the tourists could go. And then when nobody was looking, I was sneaking into the areas where the archaeologists were working. And, and those poor schmoes do not have the benefit of union scaffolding. I can tell you that. It was a kind of shaky scaffolding, and it's pretty high up there, but I got into really cool places, water cisterns and tanks and the such that they used. It had a quite elaborate system there. It was completely self-contained.
Sure.
But I never could find that thing that the voice was telling me I had to find. And so after covering every square inch I could possibly cover, I went back to the main area, and I was really kind of bummed out, so much for that. And there was this young gal giving a lecture to a bunch of tourists, and I snuck in at the back of the group, and tour operators, and I used to be a tour operator, do not appreciate freeloaders who are trying to listen in on the lectures.
Yeah.
And, but she saw me and she let me do it. And it was a very nice lecture. I caught about the last 20 minutes of it. And she told everybody, okay, you can go take pictures with your little Instamatics or whatever. Slideshows that no one will ever come over to watch. And then you got to go to the buses. With that, she kind of took a break, and she was standing next to the wall overlooking Hadrian's Ramp. and to the left and to the right were the Roman encampments. And she was just studying all of that. And I stood next to her and struck up a conversation, and we chatted about various things. And finally, I just turned and looked at her, and I said, and as people have to understand, the story of Masada is that there was Jewish zealots that stayed there. Yeah. And the Romans built the ramp, and when they got up there, they found that the zealots had committed suicide instead of being taken prisoners. And so for the Romans, it was a Pyrrhic victory.
Yeah, I do want, because we do have some people that might not understand the Jewish lore or the history, right, is that Masada is it literally means fortress. And right, basically it was the fortification. It's on top of a plateau, and it's very high up. I mean, I don't know what the height of the plateau is.
Pretty darn high when you're on rickety scaffolding.
Yeah, no, it's up there, and it's amazing that they even got up there to begin with. But they basically built a fortress on top of this plateau, and then the I don't want to say the folklore, it was built by Herod the Great, but right, but the thing is that the Jews were encased by Roman soldiers, and obviously because they were at a higher position, it was hard to do that. So they were at siege, and this is the story of the lantern, and this is where I believe the whole Hanukkah, the Hanukkah lighting of the candles come from, because basically that represented the days that they were under siege. And they supposedly only had 1 day's worth of oil, and they lasted, that multiplied, and God saved. I believe that's the story. Correct? Did I get it wrong?
Well, you're in the ballpark.
Okay.
But, at Masada, they actually were up there for months while Herod was building this ramp, and Herod was using Jews as slave laborers to do it, because the zealots would not stone their own people to death, which would have been very easy for them to do. And so, they wound up dying up there. They took their own lives. The men, cut the throats of their wives and children, and then took turns doing themselves, and then the last guy committed suicide. Now, only an old woman and a few children were all that were left to come down off the top of Masada. And the thing about it is that, now Masada is an important site for those that are in the Jewish IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. That's where they take their swearing in oath after their training, and it's an important place in the folklore because of the resistance. And but for me, the zealots were, there's a long story, and they got boxed into this thing. They committed suicide. And so there I am. I'm standing next to this young gal who's given the lecture, and find out she's working on her PhD at the University of Jerusalem. And so doing this basically to supplement her income. And finally, I just turned to her and said, as one Jew to another, what did we learn here? That it's good to die for your beliefs? And she smiled, and she turned and she looked at me and she said, no, the lesson of Masada is that you always have to have a plan B. And when she said that, it was like 10,000 gigawatts went through me. And, I knew in that moment of epiphany that what I had been told to seek, I had found. I just was looking at archaeological digs when actually I needed to talk to an archaeologist. And I came back from that, and that was in 2000, and I decided to continue my work with Yowza.com, and I've stayed with it ever since. It's always a plan B thing for me.
Yeah.
Because I do see a tribulation coming. People in awareness have prophetic dreams, visions, premonitions. And a few will come to it through a process, a more scientific process of perception, which is just seeing the world as it is. But most of the people who are in awareness today are 45 to 70 in that range, and they've been having dreams, visions, and premonitions, usually since they were children. And they tend to be very abused and isolated by their families. So they go through a very difficult process, but they don't back off. You don't, with prophetic dreams and visions, you don't unexperience them. All right. They become indelibly etched in the fabric of your life. And so you just then have to find a way to deal with it. And so while I talk about the topic of Planet X extensively, and I write about it in my books, my mission really is to be in service to those who, like myself, have come to this through dreams, visions, and premonitions. And that has affected our lives profoundly. And, a lot of the folks that do this, they find themselves ostracized by mainstream churches and faiths. They get kicked out of more churches and more study groups than Carter has little pills, because they're the ones asking questions that are not on the official "thou shalt only ask questions from this list." And they're not asking authorized questions, which is a pretty limited subset. And so what I really am trying to do is reach out to them to let them know you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not alone in your knowing, and to support them and be in service to them in whatever ways I can. And which is the reason why I wrote my latest book, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation.
Sure.
A faith-based leadership guide, because the people in awareness really they're not materialistic. Mm-hmm. Once you've really been touched in this way, it takes the glow off of the rose, so to speak, in terms of being a greedy capitalist. Materialism isn't so important in your life. Now, that's a consistent trend. People who've had major out-of-body shared death or near-death experiences experience the same thing, that once you've seen yourself as an eternal being in that experience, you, lose your fear of death completely. That's it. Just lose it. And then going to funerals is really a drag, because you understand what's on the other side of the veil, and frankly, you would just as soon go home.
Yeah.
Here is Hotel California. The other side is home. And so, when you see people moping and weeping and carrying on and beating their chests, it's like, the Irish have got it right. Stand them at the bar and get 3 sheets to the wind.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, it's helping them. And one of the big complaints that I've heard time and again from them over the years is, what's the point of being in awareness if I can't afford bullets, beans, and bunkers? Because these folks have big hearts and small wallets. And I have really pondered on that at length. And it was finally something that I realized that I wasn't looking at it the right way. I was seeing it through our consumer society paradigm. And our consumer society paradigm defines us not by what we have, but what we don't have. We don't have the newest car. We don't have the biggest house. We don't have the
fancy phone,
the snazziest whatever, the newest phone. We haven't, taken the big cruise trips, all these things that we do not have or haven't done. Yeah. This is how we measure our life, because all we have to do is fix it. Go buy something, put it on a credit card, and spend the rest of your life paying it off.
Yes.
And that's the logic of it all. But when you take awareness and you look at it through the prism of consumerism, it's a punishment. But flip that coin, and what you see is a gift from Creator that cannot be measured in financial terms. All right. And the premise of the book is that going to YouTube and looking at glowing cloud pictures, and there's a lot of nonsense on YouTube, but there's also some very good things. And the reason why there's a lot of nonsense is that there are people who are making sure that nonsense is there to keep people confused. And we can get into that in a little bit. But the day will come when you're going to look up and you're going to point at it and you're going to go, whoa, what is that? And then people are going to race into the house, turn on CNN to see what it is. Yeah. And they're going to lie out their ass, Yeah. They're going to say, don't worry, it's just an interesting celestial phenomena or some other kind of cockamamie nonsense.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Well, by the time things start to heat up and people do worry about it, it'll be too late. However, there's going to be a window of opportunity. There's going to be people who are going to look up at the sky and they're going to say, CNN is just a propaganda channel. The CNN that I worked with back in 1980s was a lean, mean news machine. It was really an honor to be involved.
Yeah.
What I see now is a joke.
Oh, it's entertainment. I think we branded it as Clinton News Network this week. Next week, it'll be something. It is entertainment. And they use, I knew CNN went south when they used that argument when they were under prosecution. They said, well, wait a minute. We're not a news organization anymore. We're an entertainment organization. And thus we can do parody and we can do things that normal news agency would get in trouble for from the FCC. Right.
Except they're just not doing entertainment news. They are a propaganda outlet, no different than Pravda during the Soviet era.
Yep.
So people have to understand that this whole entertainment argument is misdirection.
Yep.
Okay. CNN is propaganda, but so is Fox, so is MSNBC. There is no competition for news. There were a lot of major outlets in the 80s when I was working with them, and they had to compete for good news stories. Now they're just reading what's being handed to them because they service a market segment.
Right.
You have, CNN. Well, actually, what you have is MSNBC to the far left, Fox to the far right, and like the cream filling in an Oreo cookie, CNN soaks up the middle. And that's it. They're not competing with each other to get the best stories. They just, like I said, they're just reading whatever scripts they have.
It's called rip and read. I actually did a mashup. I did a mashup one time. It was hilarious, where I took a day in the news, and this is actually a good segue because we're up against a hard break here. But I did a mashup where I took one day's news cycle and basically took all of the commentary, all the lead-in stories for that day, and they were all the same across multiple mainstream news, and also local news. And it was it was what they call rip and read. You know, in the industry, it's called rip and read. And for those that don't know, there's these teletypes that come in. These news agencies basically receive their news, and then they read them live on the air. But we are talking with our very special guest, Marshall Masters, here, and we're talking about Nibiru and Planet X. If you haven't figured that one out, we're going to take a quick break, a 4-minute break. When we get back, we will continue our discussion. Stay tuned, because I believe there's going to be a lot of information, more information you've ever received on Planet X.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.